Okay, this is answering comments time again. So I had this video and then John asked a wonderful question, which was about AudioNote. So who is the manufacturer of the tubes that AudioNote uses? And actually, my experience with that 20 years ago, when I had a look at the P3 300B amp, which was at that time their kit amp. By then, AudioNote and AudioNote Kits was not two different companies. AudioNote UK was making kits, and for the kit amps, they had Softec 300B tubes. For their non-kit versions, I believe they use US NOS tubes. But right now, what they are doing, what AudioNote does, is that they develop their own tubes. And they did their own research on it, and they choose molybdenum for the plate material, and they made a joint effort with Peace Vein, or I heard it's also pronounced as Pavan, and it's a Chinese company. But when you look at the Chinese tube manufacturers, this is the group. They are those guys who have the most experience with making vacuum tubes, and they are the most dependable, most solid present-day vacuum tube manufacturer possibly. So AudioNote partnered up with Pavan because if you want to manufacture vacuum tubes by yourself, it's a gigantic investment. You cannot do that, so all of the tube manufacturer companies like the Russian and whatnot, Chinese, others who manufacture today tubes, they use the old tube manufacturing plants that they inherited from the older days, and they use those machines and toolings. But even with Peter Quatrup collaborating with Pavan, it was an enormous investment from AudioNote's part to invest in the production of and development of new tubes. So they are not just copying a Chinese 211 tube, but Peter Quatrup looked at the structure of 211s, 300Bs, and other tubes, and they are trying to improve on them. So they use molybdenum for the anode material, which is an amazing metal because it has a super duper high melting temperature. So it has much better stability than other plate materials, but it's extremely hard to machine and work with it. Hence, that's why they needed to invest so much money into the development of these tubes. And this is the Steve Hoffman forum. I recommend it. They have really great stuff here, excellent discussions. And this post was by Steve Hoffman personally, his experience about the AudioNote tubes. I think this was from 2018 when the AudioNote tubes came out, and they came out at a really good price, so which is quite amazing. And Steve Hoffman is saying that in his system they are better than the Elrogs. So Elrogs are present the new tube manufacturers as well. It's a German company and they make 300Bs, but their tubes are super duper expensive. So they are very expensive tubes. And AudioNote's tubes are much cheaper than Elrogs. So Peter Quatrup was not going for a super high price for his new tubes. But I have to mention something about AudioNote and Elrog, is that these two guys are the only ones that I know of who build amplifiers and also make vacuum tubes. Because as you know, vacuum tube making is a very separate business. People who are doing it are usually not involved in building amplifiers, building schematics, and those people who design and build amplifiers are not involved in tube development. So what most tube amplifier builders do is that they take existing technologies and apply it for their own stuff. And what these two guys do is that uh, Peter Quattrup from Audionaut, he also invests in developing new tubes. So it's not just a 300B copy or a 211 copy, but an improved version of it that he can use in his systems. So the development of tube and amp goes hand in hand. And Elrog, the same thing is true there. Thomas Meyer, he is Elrog, or I think is a CEO of Elrog or something. You can look at his blog and website, Vinyl Savior. I already introduced it in one of my posts, and he builds amplifiers himself. So if you want a custom-made, custom-built amplifier, this is what Thomas Meyer is doing, and he's Elrog. So his amps are super duper expensive, but if you want the best money can buy, then basically your choice is either Elrog or Audionaut. and as you see, by quite curiosity, they develop both vacuum tubes and amplifiers. So I hope that answers John's questions on Audionaut's tubes. He also had a second part to the question on how to clean the tube pins, and he mentioned silver dip and then using isopropanol and then connective polymer. That sounds like a great plan, but then I go back to Lou's post, and he describes another method where you clean with a cotton swab and basically a polish, like a metal polish, like a jeweler's polish. I use a jeweler's polish, and after that clean the pins with clean pure isopropanol with a cotton swab, and then you are done. You can also apply later on something to improve conductivity, but basically I use the same method as Lou uses, and it makes a great improvement. I would advise of using against using anything that is corrosive or invasive to the metal structure of the pins. I would, so no silver dipping. I would just recommend polishing. That's the safest for the tube pins. And when you polish the tube pin, then basically you are removing not just the surface rust, but also the miniature ridges and unevenness from the surface. So, and that will make a big difference, because when you have these tiny ridges on your tube which are microscopic, and this is your tube socket, and it's trying to meet the tube socket, and there are some points that match up but others not. So all the current is flowing through a very small amount of the contact between the two surfaces. But when you polish the surface, then basically you are forming a clean surface, and when you mate it with the tube socket, then they can finally line up instead of having just ridges and bumps and then just tiny spots where all the current is running through. So that's why this polishing method is superior than just chemical cleaning. So please like and subscribe. Bye bye.